something new.
When we watch a performance, what draws our attention to a certain performer? How can the presence of a performer be increased?
Sommer Ulrickson
These
and
questions
Dan Pelleg,
are the starting point
and
of
they'll
my
be
research
speaking to us
called
today.
The Glowing
Hi.
Skin, which I will talk
From
about.
Europe, where they are
Hey,
based.
I'm
And although we
Martin.
can't
I'm
see
the
our
artistic
participants,
director of
but
Danish
if you have any
organization
questions,
called
feel free
AFA.
to type them in and we will get your
doing especially
messages. You
site-specific
can also type
art.
them in Chinese if that's
focus on
easier for
things.
you, and I will.
I'm really excited to tell you about how the
But
Danish
if you don't
art
mind,
scene
please
is looking
identify,
like in
introduce
Denmark.
yourself, who you are, so that maybe
希
we
望
can
透过游
address
牧计划，你
your
能够更
question
了
more
解自己，
directly.
能够看见自己的优势，而转化在未来的职
And
场上。
then Sommer will start first today. She's from California originally, but also one of the co-founders with Dan at the Weekends Company. And she also has her own independent career on site as well right now. So she will talk to us about the current situation in Europe, especially with now the COVID situation and all that. So Sommer, would you like to say hi?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's a shame to not be able to see everyone, but I'll just trust that you're actually there. Yeah, it's an interesting time to talk about being a dancer or choreographer as a career, because it's a very precarious time for all of us in the performing arts, as we can see with
welcome everyone to this
cancellations
GOAT
and
project.
new rules
欢迎
and
大家
things like
加
this.
入我
But
们这个
perhaps it's a
线上的
good
会谈。My name is
perhaps it's a
YaTin
good
Lin.
moment
I'll
to
be
really
your
think about what
moderator
it
for
means
today,
to choose this
speaking from
career,
Taipei, Taiwan.
because I think it's
and we're very happy to have with
an
us
exaggerated
the first session
version of
guests
what
from
we go through
Israel
all the
and
time
Spain.
anyway.
There will be
Which means
Amit
that when you
Bard,
set off on
hi,
your career as a dancer or
and
a
as well as
choreographer,
Carlos Gonzalez
you're
and Seth
constantly
Buckley,
in
who are in
an
Spain right now.
unknown.
So welcome.
You can have an idea of what you want your career to
maybe
be, or you
we
can have a sort of a
let
plan
people
or a
know
wish.
who
But
you are a
my
little bit, and
experience,
before we
a lot
jump
of the
into
time,
our
it takes sort of a
topic for today.
zigzag.
So I just briefly read from your
Path instead
bio,
of
because
a very
Amit is
clear
born
one.
in
And the
Israel
path that it takes
and has
is
studied in the Menor
almost all
Kabir High
cases
School for
not
the Arts,
this one,
as well as dancing in the Kibbutz
which I
Contemporary
always
Dance
sort of, when I
Company
was
School.
younger, thought it would be that,
And
you know, if you
however,
do well
after
and you
Israel, she
work
moved her
hard and you're
professional
good,
career
and you
to
get one
Europe.
job and it leads to the
And
next.
so
But
currently
that's
she is with
really
the
not the case.
Gerlitz, the Gerlitz Dance Company
Which
as
I
their
think
company rehearsal
just
director.
means that you have to
So Amit, would you
really
like to
love what
say
you
hi?
do, and you have to be
Hi
resilient.
everyone.
And I think that
Nice
that's what we
to
are
have this happening.
really
So I'm
learning about
talking to you now
ourselves
from
these
my
days
family house
is
in Israel. I managed to
how
come
resilient
and
are
visit.
we
Took a while.
as individuals and
Yeah, so as
a
said, I'm an
collective
Israeli.
together. How can we also support each other in this crazy time? So yeah, so I'm from California, as was mentioned. I moved to Germany over 20 years ago, and I came because at that time, I mean, Germany, I suppose, in comparison to a lot of other countries, is still quite, it's well funded. There are a lot of theaters here. And at that time, it was even more so. So I was quite excited when I came to Germany to find all the opportunities, especially in Berlin. But it quickly became, you know, you once you know the system, you start to see also the cracks in the system and the things that make it complicated. But as to my own career, when I first came to Berlin, I quite quickly met Dan Pelleg, my partner today. And we together, I mean, long story short, basically we formed a company, the three of us, with Marco Weigart together. And I think that we found this true gift of collaboration, which is a big theme for me, also for today, is this idea of collaborating, because especially I think when you're young, when you're starting out, you have a lot of ego and vision, and you know, which vision is great and ego is complicated, can be great, can also be a problem. But it turned out that Dan and Marco were, for me, a really good check on my ego while simultaneously helping support my vision and introducing me to theirs. And it was a time for me that was a great opening up of what I knew to be possible. So of course my experience and my, my sense of things was about this much. And then with Dan and Marco, it became this much. And then from there I continued, and I feel like I was able to, I was introduced to and was open for more things than I had originally thought possible. And I think that that's, for those of you out there, I'm not sure what all of your goals and focuses are, but I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind, is to be open to things that are coming at you. The way of working that Dani brought with him, the detail that Marco brought was different than what I had. And so it's not that it's you collaborate and it's all happy and smooth. It's quite, there's a lot of conflict involved. But if there's one thing one thing the Germans taught me as a Californian is that conflict is very good. It can, it's called, yes, exactly.
Konstruktive Reibung, constructive friction.
Yes. Yeah. And it's right. It's constructive friction. That's what it is. You bump up against somebody and you become clearer in your own desires, but you're aware, he's saying this. Maybe I should listen to what he's saying and rethink how I'm approaching it. So that's a real, I don't know, Dani, it's probably similar.
A little more like concrete by giving some examples. Of course, Sommer, Marco, and I have a very multifaceted approach to art. But one of Sommer, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but one of Sommer's guiding principles is that when she creates for stage, it's important for her most of the time to have the feeling that she sees clearly embodied characters, personalities that are going through a clear psychological, at least in a clear psychological situation or going through a process, and to see and to understand how this psychological situation or process is a guideline to what's happening on stage, right? You could say that that's one of your, and Marco, our third founding partner of We Dance, often likes to describe the way that he approaches stage as visual poetry. So it's very, very emotional, very intuitive, and has a lot to do with how the images emerge and interact with each other. And then I came, and I was, until today, very fascinated with compositional structures of movement. So we have these very, very different like examples of things that guide us, that motivate us through stage. We bring our input into this collaboration of three people, and each of us comes with a suggestion, an idea, input, and we're like, isn't that perfect and brilliant as it is? And the other people look from their point of view and they're like, it makes no sense to me. I'm missing this and this and this. And then because it's a collaboration, you're forced to take a second look at your own perspective, and you're forced to open up your perspective, to open up your view, to grade up what you expect from yourself.
Right.
So it forced the three of us to really grow and expand in our approach to what art even is.
Yeah, actually, we haven't formally introduced Dan yet, right? You're from Israel, and then you had more of a music background before coming to dance, am I correct? And you're actually very invested in sort of the training of the techniques of your performers and dancers. So is that one of the kind of focus you would like to be sharing?
Well, that was one of the, those were some of the things I suggested to bring to this conversation. I was born and raised and educated as a dancer in Israel, but it's true, I started learning how to dance at the same time I learned how to classically sing. relatively late. I was 16. But as I was taking dance classes for the first time in my life, I also was taking voice classes and singing in the classical choir, learning how to read from notes, learning about harmony and musical theory, musical styles and history. So I think Sommer also has a very strong musical background, just from a different angle, a very strong passion, and I would say very, very impressive talent for music, for understanding music and for also performing music. That's also one of the reasons.
Yes, I was going to say, it's one of the reasons we ended up collaborating, because you don't.
That's also something.
Go ahead, Danny.
Also, Marco has a very strong passion and a background for music, singing. He also plays the piano.
Right.
So that's maybe one of the reasons that when I work as a choreographer, also as a dancer, musicality is very present in my perception, and it's a very powerful tool for me. The subject of training has become more and more central to my work, because since I can also add that I was working for 2 years in Israel, employed with the junior company of Batsheva Ensemble. And then I moved to Berlin, where for 16 years I was a freelancer dancer and choreographer. So in which situation we met Sommer and founded the WeDance. But for the last 9 years, Marco and I have been employed at the City Theater in Germany, which is a different structure. Yeah, we're not freelancers, we're employed. We have many, many obligations. And one of the differences is that I have become practically the ballet master or the training master of the company, and understanding more and more how intimately the training is with the choreographic language that you end up using.
Right.
So questions concerning training, what should training look like? What should it be for? What should one expect from it? Are questions that interest me very much. What different kinds of, concerning different kinds of training and different approaches to training. So I'd be happy to talk about that if anyone has questions.
I wonder, Danny, I wonder if it's smart that we show a clip from something that involves also this collaboration and musicality, if it's from Lovesick or from the Shock-Headed Peter, maybe. Do you have a preference which one you think would be better?
Well, in Lovesick, it's quite a long clip, but we could see both you and me singing.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a bit of a long clip, but we can start it and see how long we want to continue. Should we do that?
Sure. Let's.
Okay. So that's, I think that's the 4th link that I sent you.
Okay. So maybe can our administrator Panda help show the last one from Sommer, the last link, right? From Sommer.
I think so. Yeah.
Soft online. So maybe we want to turn on the volume.
Yes.
Okay.
再麻烦 Panda 哈，帮我们播一下 Sommer 传的最后一个连接。好。
Is it? You can hear it, or?
I think they're working on it. Just give them a little bit of time, and maybe in the meanwhile, you can introduce the piece a little bit, like when it was made.
Yeah, this is a piece that I that's Danny singing. A piece that I created, but really collaboratively with Danny, Marco, with an opera singer, with a group of musicians. And it's the story of a lovesick astronaut.
Ah, okay. All right. So let's watch it since it's now playing. Can everyone hear the sound as well? Yeah, it's good on mine.
Okay.
Okay.
here we can hear the opera singer, and this is Marco we've been talking about.
Ah, okay. In the 69 shirt, or is that?
Yes, okay. Yeah. And Danny's back on the laying down, and I'm next to the big machine back there.
Ah, I see. Got it. Dan's lying down on the chair, and you're by
That's
like
right.
a table or something. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So
And this is Marco.
Ah, okay.
Yes, this is Marco.
You could actually turn on subtitles, captions.
Oh.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
有字幕，如果你们可以帮忙打开字幕的话，有吗？ Ah, yes, great. We see the English subtitle. Great. I sleep when the sun is rising. Blah, blah, blah.
Actually, Sommer, I haven't gone to correct the Erich Kästner.
Oh.
So this is a production through, you said, the city theater that you're at
this
now?
Is, no, this is in Berlin, this production.
Okay.
It's in Berlin at a small experimental opera house. And it's we could really make it up on our own. So all the music is original, the text is original, all of the movement is original. And it's like in this situation, you can see I'm wearing all of this protective gear, and it was kind of a situation where we're all sort of very vulnerable and trying to recover from our love sickness. And it's kind of a typical production for me in the sense that it involves lots of things, actors and dancing and singing, and me attaching myself to Danny in this situation.
As you can see, I would say that it's typical for Sommer, at least very often. It's impossible to categorize her work into one of the more conventional categories. You can't call it a theater piece. There's too much dance and music going on around. But you also you can't call it a musical production, because a musical is so distinct in its stylistic, in its mannerisms, in its conventions, and Sommer completely breaks those conventions. So it would be a complete stretch to call it a musical.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's much more than just a concert or just a dance piece.
So the role of Sommer in this production is like the director and choreographer and performer. Is that right? Or
yeah.
And what about, you said the lyrics and the music, those were written by other artists?
We did everything. So I have the piano player is also a composer. And as you can see, it's quite important in such a situation that all of the people can sing. And it's quite a difficult thing to find. I mean, Danny can attest to this. It's quite difficult to find dancers who are contemporary dancers that can also sing. Because it's not generally part of the training, which is a bit of a shame, because I think in any case that it's really helpful to have some musicality as training and to learn how to speak when you're a dancer, to learn all of these things. If you ever use it exactly, it doesn't really matter, because it all helps you.
I would also add that it's very, well, I'd say it's very not self-evident. It's simple to find contemporary dancers who can act well, or who can perform text or perform a role. I don't know about how it is in Taiwan or in other Asian countries. I know that generally in Europe, in Israel, acting is maybe the best case scenario. It's given as some little bonus course, but of course, you know, if you want to become well, it maybe isn't, of course, but it's regarded as the default. If you want to become a dancer, then you concentrate on your dancing skills and not so much on your acting skills. So you're left with either people who are somehow naturally very gifted or happen to gain enough experience throughout their career. We're lucky enough to be guided by good people. I consider myself to be one of them. Guided a lot by Sommer. She's basically my acting coach. And I also had a little bit of experience also with other directors. So to find dancers who can then dance but also act well, that's not so self-evident.
Yeah, in Taiwan where I teach, I'm in the Taipei National University of the Arts, the School of Dance. And we have actually what's called a 7-year undergraduate program, starting from 3 years pre-college and then 4 years undergrad. That's when they get their BFA. And then of course they can go on to MFA and MA and even PhD if they're, very devoted or dedicated to their careers. But indeed, the acting and the vocals and the music, these are not the sort of core training, in the curriculum. A lot more percentage of the time is spent in the studio with the body training, both either in ballet, contemporary, or Chinese, opera movements and indigenous song and dance. So I can hear what you're trying to say here. It's very rare that we have a gifted, more well-rounded kind of a performer who can sing and act and dance all.
I mean, it's really a question of give and take. Of course, the more time you spend on one thing, the less time you have for the other. So I suppose in the end, it depends very much on, ideally, I would say an educational institution would be flexible enough to offer choice. So as a student, I would, if I see that, in any case, I don't feel like I'm passionate about acting. I'm not so passionate about, how do you say verkörpern, Sommer? About
embodying, to embody, you mean? Or
characters, like what do you know?
Oh, like playing a character, you mean? Or
I'm not interested as a dancer to be able to come on stage and pretend I'm someone else. I just want to dance. Then I'd concentrate on my dancing. But if I actually find it very interesting and inspiring and enriching to bring elements of theater into productions, I feel that's stuff I would love to do. Then ideally, my educational institution would be able to give me that as an option. Do maybe a little bit less a certain type of technical training and invest a little more in acting.
I think in a way it's also about the exposure to it. That, like Danny's saying, it's not necessarily about requiring things, but even having workshops where it might be that you discover you're not very good at singing, but at least you've been exposed to it, so that if you're asked in an audition sometime to, to sing, it's not the first time you've done it. If you are asked to read a text, maybe you're not an expert, maybe you haven't had, a whole semester of classes, but you've done it once, so that you feel comfortable and maybe you've discovered, is this something that I like or not? So I think that Danny's right, that it's really important that universities and schools start thinking about it also in terms of even shorter classes, workshops and things like that, because I mean, Danny, I think, does more auditions than I do and is looking probably often for something different than what I am. But I know that musicality is very important, for example, for him. And people would think that dancers are automatically musical, but that's not necessarily the case, depending on what you
People
need.
Would think that musicians are automatically musical, and it's
that's not even the case.
There you go. Yes, that's right.
Maybe we can take a look at one of the clips that I sent. I'm thinking we can look at Gossip really short, because that's maybe a nice example of how dancers actually get to use also acting skill and musicality
in
a form of dancing, we can check that out.
Okay, maybe so Panda, can you the second link from Dan Gossip from Alpha, right? This one?
Yeah.
Okay, can we take a quick look at this? Okay.
Maybe Danny, before or after the clip, you can talk about how
on a high kind of a high structure.
I'll tell you after.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. Gossip.
Yeah, this looks good.
Okay, here we go. Yes, this one, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just a really short. This entire dance piece was choreographed and performed on this structure that we see here. Can we hear also sound?
It was there a second ago, but
的声音可以大一点吗? Okay, the sound. Oh, we don't see it. We don't hear it. I mean, 声音没有听见耶。Okay, here we go. Great. Thank you.
Comme dit Totor, ça ne fait pas tort pour l'argent qu'elle gagne en dehors. On est d'accord, comme dit Totor, faut pas se conduire comme un butor.
So we're watching, on the left you can see Lital Ben-Chorin, who is Israeli. On the right you see Kawabata Mami, who is from Japan.
J'ai pas le droit d'y fourrer mon nez parce que moi correct et régulier. Pendant que les autres vont jouer le pastis à la belote avec les potes dans les bistrots, Totor contrôle tout ce que la tête lui raconte. Il fait ses comptes dans son bureau. Pour le reste, il y a le boni avant qu'elle tarde, il a compris. Il n'y a rien à chiquer avec lui, c'est plus un homme, c'est un taxi. À moins d'erreur ou d'omission, à la première contestant sur la machine à coller des jetons et prête à la distribution. Comme dit Totor, si qu'on se laisse faire, on est foutu. Comme dit Totor, il faut d'abord quand ça va plus. Y aller d'auteur et taper forme une fois qu'on a fait du sport, comme dit Totor.
So what is this song that is being sung?
Comme un butor.
What is the song that is being sung?
It's Edith Piaf.
Edith Piaf.
Yeah, the French singer. I don't really know what the song is about.
So it's more about the rhythmic kind of
about the rhythm, the atmosphere of it, and of course we really decided to just take it as something that gives us an atmospheric framework in order to, you know, so that we can inhabit it with our choreography. As you see, I mean, obviously they're acting, they are pretending to be two people who are having a kind of an argument with each other. So the entire dance vocabulary is taken from the world of the vocabulary of
sign language.
It's basically a lot of mimics in the face and hand gestures that are, they pretend to mean something very specific, but obviously we don't really know what they're saying, but they seem to be understanding exactly what they're telling each other. And we get the gist of it. We understand they are, well, it started off with disagreement and, you know, stuff that happens when people have an argument, a fight, but they end up agreeing, as we say. To make it work, we decided, of course, to set it very, very precisely to music. So it's basically dancing. I would say what makes it dancing is that they are acting very precisely to music. If they would be just, if they were not musical, it would be hard to define this as being maybe clearly dance. You could just say, well, these are just two actors. They're not using words. You could say that it's non-verbal theater, but they're obviously just two characters. But as soon as we use it, you know, precisely defined to music, our minds immediately categorize it as dance. So it's an interesting example of how you find two dancers who do have some talent to act. They weren't really angry at each other, obviously, you know, they're acting. So they have this talent, they can be convincing in this short embodiment of other personalities in a situation that's not really there. But they're using their skills as dancers both by being able to define a very clear sequence, physical sequence, and aligning it to music very precisely.
Okay.
So another way
Danny,
in which...
Go ahead.
I have a question for you, Danny, then, because we were just talking about collaboration also. And I wondered in like scenes like this, how much of the movement is something that you developed together and what did you give them?
So in this scene, basically each of the dancers created as a task about, I would say, almost half of the sequence was each of the dancers created a sequence, just a long sequence of gestural vocabulary.
Do you remember what your exact, what you told them exactly to create? Yes.
I can reconstruct. I don't really remember because this piece is from 2012 or 13. But it would have been something like tell a story. Imagine that you can use your basically your hands in an invented sign language, maybe.
Yeah.
To tell a story, like a short story. Then they learn it from each other, and then I sit with both of them and process it together to one long phrase. So then we have so my input is just to take a look and see if this movement can be a little different, if we need a little more of this there or a little less of this there. So I put in the spices and I decide how long to mix it and bake it. And then we take this whole thing, and then most of my work came into deciding who does what when, and exactly what, how they take from each other the cues, and how they...
The musicality of it then also.
Musicality, but also the dramaturgy, the scene. Who tells what when, and what are their reactions, where, she, when Lital goes, talk to the hand, and Mommy goes,
right.
What did you hear what she said? So that's the things that I put in to build it in the end.
Right. It's very interesting the way that you break it down for us, because on Friday, Mommy was also, tuning in, and I got to see, what she looked like off stage, and now to see her performing, it's very, with pleasure. Yes.
I actually would like to kind of round up I'd like to show the other clip, The Name of the Rose, because it's very, very different. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
Okay.
Just to have a kind of a balance.
Okay.
It's again an important, while we're talking, maybe Panda can prepare.
So the first clip, right? Yin Yang from Name of the Rose?
Yes.
Okay. 再麻烦放第一个连接. Okay.
I think it's on the scale of using our acting skills or tools from acting theater, this is actually far on the other scale.
Okay.
Because the two dancers performing do actually not at all, they're not required at all to use any acting skills. They are, this is very, very purely abstract compositional piece.
So should they start playing it now from the start?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's start, and I'll still talk in the middle. There's Mommy actually.
On the left again.
Okay. Leaving the book and dragging the dead body. This scene from In the Name of the Rose, inspired by a novel by Umberto Eco. Basically, the book is a criminal novel about a murder that needs to be solved. Here we see Monting.
Monting on the left.
Yes. And Seth, so Hugh Monting, and Seth Buckley is Canadian.
Seth, he was with us last session too.
Yeah. You can already hear the music has a very simple, I don't know if I'm in sync with the music, but it has a very clear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But the choreography breaks it down to very into a complex internal rhythm.
Maybe Monting would like to add in later on about her feeling.
I was just thinking while you were talking about the counting now, yes. Dani, that's an interesting thing for dancers in general, is like when you count to music, when you have to feel moving with a group, and when you use a sound instead of a count. You know, when you say 1, 2, and up. No, these are all kinds of different versions of people's keeping time.
I mean, when we talk about unison, to simply count a phrase to music is a very useful, very practical tool to achieve a basic unison. But it can never be the only tool, because humans always perceive music a little individually. So it's never enough to simply count together. We also have to enhance skills of attention and physical empathy with the people around us. We have to understand how to read body cues from the people around us and feel together with the people around us physically. And I don't know if Sommer, were you intending to talk at all about viewpoints today?
I can mention it, yeah, after.
I mean, just to mention, Sommer gives workshops for dancers in a technique called viewpoints. And I won't talk about exactly what it is, but what it gives you as a dancer is an enhancing of the skill of attention, being able to be part of a system around you concerning time and movement.
Okay, maybe we can pause the video.
Sure.
And, let Sommer, would you like to elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, the short definition of the viewpoints is that they are they're kind of rules inside of time and space that allow people to move together with an awareness of each other. So it kind of relies on your perception and forces you to be in a space where you're responding to what's going on around you and being able to act accordingly. So it's not, Dani made a good point about it once, that it's not a good idea to call it a form of improvisation, because improvisation makes people think they should be creative and like come up with stuff. And the viewpoints are really more about training a skill set of paying attention to people with whom you're in a room and how they are moving and how you can respond. It keeps you at a sort of constant, heightened level of awareness.
So it's called viewpoints, just like point of view, viewpoints?
Yeah, the viewpoints, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dani and I have both had the experience with dancers, with performers who stubbornly assure you that, you know, they are right, they're on the 1, they're turning on the 3. And even if they're in a group of 6 people who are supposed to be doing it at the same time, and they're the only ones who are not doing it, they still will say, but I'm right. And I think part of the idea is that when you're lucky and you have developed this feeling of moving together, then it won't ever matter if you're right or wrong, because you'll feel where the group is.
I can share
like
a personal
Baby
experience.
Yes.
As a dancer, I maybe this is something that some people are familiar with, but one of those eye-opening experiences I had back in Israel, we were rehearsing a choreography by Angela Prejlokaj.
Okay.
Choreographer. The piece is called Larmes Blanches, which means white tears. And I was supposed to be in unison with a group of people. And my boss kept stopping me and telling me, "You're wrong," and correcting me. And I kept insisting, as Sommer says, that I was right. It was becoming very exasperating. And after, I don't know how long, she looked at me and she said, "Danny, can't you just simply dance together with them?" I said, "Oh, this I can." And to prove that I was able to, I did. I stopped insisting on being right, and I just danced together with them. And in that moment, it opened my eyes. I was like, of course, it's not about proving to anyone that I'm right or anyone else is wrong. We want to achieve a unison. If that's the objective, I'll just dance together. And I was able. So later, I think I also understood that it's not because people are being on purpose
stubborn, or
it's more that really people have different understandings. Sometimes we really perceive the music differently, and sometimes even if we do agree on the music, we have different assumptions. If I ask a dancer to jump on 3, you know, the intuition of one dancer would be to hit the floor on 3 to begin the jump on 3, and other dancers would hit the top. That's one very simple way of talking about it. So, you know, so we're not jumping together, and it turns out that we understood what it means to jump on 3 in a different way. So you can, you know, you can figure it out. It's helpful to, and as soon as we know more precisely what we're talking about, that's one way. But very often a shortcut is to simply say, find an agreement, understand what you need to do to be together. And if you're lucky, I mean,
maybe, I was just going to say, I think maybe one of a similar thing that comes up in dance when something's not working is that because it's out of fear, and fear turns into a stubbornness. And I think that's also my experience. I'm good about being able to do this, or I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do it. And so I become sort of obstinate and think it's not going to work. And so you get sometimes this resistance of like, well, that's not going to work. And hopefully, you know, for all those listeners out there, this is one thing that you can get rid of immediately, because this is really the most frustrating for people working with you, but also on your own. I mean, it's very frustrating to stand in your own way. And I think to come back to, like, you know, trying to have a career that as a performer or a choreographer, which is in any case going to be an uphill battle, the sooner that you can get rid of your own obstinance and fear and resistance, the better.
Right. Wow, this is all very important, especially, you know, about collaborating with each other and how to, like you said, be, you know, in unison, or to reach a common, right, understanding of the musicality of the piece and of what's being requested of the performer, or what's expected and all that. Yeah. We're coming close to the hour. I'm thinking we still have some material, of course, prepared, but Dan, what do you think? Do you want to do the audition clips, or you want to save it for later in case and Sommer, or is there something you like to?
I mean, I would probably play the very first one I think I sent you, just because it's this is what we were working on up until 5 days before everything shut down, the pandemic. And it was the idea behind it, which kind of was interestingly coincided with this pandemic, was it's called The Art of Being Human. And it has as
I'll ask them to prepare the video, the first one you sent, right? You have the first link from Sommer. Yeah. Art of Being Human. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You said it was prepared, but
I was saying we were working on it,
right? Because of the
it will hopefully come back. But it really showed it's a collaboration with musicians, and it was quite a delicate collaboration because the musicians' instruments are very quiet and they can't move very much when they're playing them, and so it required a real attention to detail from the dancers for and with each other and around the musicians and also around the sculptural piece. This is from Danny's link.
Not the one from Dan, but from Sommer in the chat from today.
I'm just describing a different piece, but
今天那个
chat Vimeo
不好意思，今天 Zoom chat 刚刚传的。OK， 还是你可以直接从我们的 chat box 今天的部分 play 第一个 Vimeo，it's the Vimeo link, right?
Vimeo link I sent.
Yeah. 是 Vimeo 的这个，有音乐家现场演奏的。Sorry.
That's a piece with Danny. That one right there is a piece that Danny and I made. That's a YouTube link, so that's probably not it. But
Vimeo.
That's Danny again.
Or should I share it? Because I have it too.
Yeah, maybe you should.
可以吗？如果不行，我从我这边播是吗？
It's a really short one. It's like 40 seconds.
So you were saying, Sommer, it was a very delicate collaboration.
Yeah, it required. Yeah, exactly. It required the dancers to work in a movement fashion with musicians that are not used to moving at all, and this was quite an interesting. Yes, as much as they could, because they have to stay still when they play the instruments, but they have these sculptural pieces that they're moving on, so you can see a little bit of it here. I don't know if you can hear it, but
here. Is this the one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on, enlarge it.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a really short one, so.
The Art of Being Human. Okay.
So
I hope everyone saw it, heard it. The music was okay, yeah?
I mean,
we could hear it. So I don't know if, yeah.
Okay, good. I'll stop sharing then. Okay, so
I was just mentioning that about it or thinking about it because of the we were talking about the letting go of fear as a performer and not being obstinate as a person collaborating. When you're doing this kind of a thing, there was no way for me to be everywhere. I mean, first of all, the audience is surrounding them, or will be when there's an audience again. But there's so much detail in like how you can touch a musician and where their bow goes that I had to trust the dancers completely to take care of each other, to take care of the musicians. There's parts in it where the musicians really fall backwards with their instruments in their hands, and the instruments are 100,000 euros worth money. So you have this real care. I mean, Dan and I had it in another piece that we did in New York as well, that we were working with a violinist and a cellist, and even just holding for a moment, holding the violin and the bow felt like you're holding you're holding so much money in your hands. And it just
when Alban came into the studio, really happy to have a new bow. What was it, his bow? And we were joking around that if something happened to it, wow, it would cost a lot. And he realized suddenly that because it was new, it hadn't been insured yet.
Yes.
And took it very slowly back to the bag and brought his old bow.
Yes.
These musicians have sometimes ridiculously expensive.
Yeah. Sometimes I know they could be on loan, right? from another
exactly
or something, so they're responsible for it.
It just means it's another way in which, I mean, dancers are really like underappreciated creatures in so many ways. That, you know, we take care of so many things. We take care of each other, we take care of each other's bodies, we take care of our own bodies, and then when you're involved in collaboration, you're taking care of people's feelings, and you're still trying to push forward with a vision. And then when you work with musicians, again, you're constantly, so it requires, I think a dancer's life or a choreographer's life, it really requires a huge amount of perception and awareness and empathy. And it's quite a lot to balance for the small amount that most dancers get paid.
I know. Yes, we're working on that. Last session we talked about the dancers forming unions to, you know, be able to have more, be better, better paid, and for their compensation and all that. So, of course, that's a very important topic. Great. So, what do you think? Maybe we take a short break now, since it's
and then we'll get some questions or
time.
But maybe we can start thinking if they have questions, if they're curious about anything.
Yes, please. So feel free to send us your questions either in Chinese or English, and then after a 5-minute quick break, we'll come back and continue. So please stay with us, okay? 欢迎大家待会儿如果提问的话，可以简单自我介绍一下，我们比较知道如何针对您的问题来回应。好，我们5分钟见，谢谢。Okay, see you in 5. Okay, so welcome back. Thanks for staying with us in the second half. And we're very happy to already have some questions in our chat. The first one is coming from JS Wong. The question is regarding the viewpoints. His question is it the viewpoints technique by Mary Overly or something that you have personally developed? And can you give an example of such exercise that benefits a dancer performer? So maybe Sommer, would you like to?
Yeah. Yes, originally the viewpoints originally were started by Mary Overly in New York, and then further developed by Anne Bogart, who's a theater director in New York. And I learned it from her for her company. From Anne Bogart, yeah. Okay, and then I continued developing it in my own way for things that I found kind of important for dancers. And I'm also right now I'm continuing to develop it for musicians. So it's something that can kind of be molded onto what you need it for specifically. And an exercise, an example of an exercise that would, I mean, all the exercises are beneficial, but I suppose one of the very basic things that you start with is that you are only moving in parallel lines to the other people on the stage. And you practice something that's called soft focus, which means you don't look at something in a hard way. You really kind of keep your focus so that you can see peripherally, so that I can see both of my hands out here. And the idea is that you're kind of reduced to only being able to do a few things. You can only run, walk, stand, and fall. And in this, you have to respond impulsively to other people's, they give an impulse and you respond. And that's kind of the training, is to cut down the time between your responses to things so that you're really kind of not overthinking. How can I make this cool? What can I do with this? You're just responding to other people's bodies. And I think that can be a really strong tool.
Great. And thank you. And actually, JS has a question, I believe, maybe for Dan, because you said you're working more like a ballet master, right? So the question is, how do you plan for the basic training for dancers? And what is the essential training? And what are the additional necessary skills for dancers?
Okay, so diving into this subject for a moment, I realized with experience, with gaining more and more experience as a choreographer, observing colleagues, teachers in school, that it seems a very, very, I'll put it very bluntly to save time. A principle that seems to be very prevalent and and taken for granted in training methods is that class or a set of classes is about practicing exercises. Many teachers create a set of exercises, maybe a sequence of sets of exercises, and they practice these exercises again and again and again until the dancers can perform these exercises very well. And I've observed that, unfortunately, as a choreographer, this is not necessarily very beneficial for me, because many dancers end up graduating from an educational institution, and they're experts. They're brilliant in performing these exercises, but they become very inflexible, both physically and intellectually, with exploration of new and original ways of moving. So I think the problem is that, of course, I mean, maybe we haven't stated it yet, but both Sommer and I are contemporary artists, so we're usually not working a lot with classical forms. It happens sometimes, but it's more rare. Contemporary educational structures were inspired at the most part from the existing structures, which were ballet methods. for centuries, the ballet method of education is still developing and being perfected and being explored. And the thing is that I would say that the main objective, the goal of a ballet training is to enable dancers to be able to perform ballet. I do ballet because I want to perform ballet. The more I do the tendu, the passes, the tombé pas de bourrées, the tours en l'air, the pirouettes, the more I practice these things, the better I will be able to perform it on stage. And classical ballet, let's be oversimplified. Let's kind of pretend that there's not neoclassical and modern contemporary ballet. Talk about the ballet, the traditional old-fashioned ballet. In order to perform that well, I have to practice, do my sissons and my assemblées and my jetés and pirouettes. However, in contemporary dance, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's about exploring. It's about expanding your vocabulary, breaking borders that you find in order to constantly find new ways of expression and new vocabulary. Okay, so that was a very long introduction. So the answer to the question, when I conduct a class, we call it, in our company, we call it a research session. And the reason is that we want to make ourselves aware that the goal of this session is not to perfect being able to do a certain exercise. It's to become better researchers and to become generally better as dancers. I come to my session as a teacher with a general sense of what I feel we can become better at as dancers. Can we become better in understanding? Lately, for example, Mongting can tell you, I've been very busy about understanding when we can feel that we lose control over balancing our body on one leg in our hip joint. If we're going off balance, try and show, and have that collapse. To understand how the body can signal to us before that we might be losing control, and to understand how to use this. We can decide that we want to use that as a piece of vocabulary, because it's an exciting action. When you know that you want your body to collapse on the hip joint, it can be something very exciting, but it can be also something that's very debilitating if it happens again and again when you don't want it to happen. You start hopping, you start holding yourself back. You can't be as free, as big as you can be. So that would be a subject that I would come into class, a focus point, and I would try to find exercises for that class that will challenge this skill in order to make it better. And I would keep maybe these exercises, I would develop them maybe for a few days, but then very often I'd forget them, maybe completely, maybe for months, maybe for years, because I want to be constantly refreshing my experience. I want to be constantly looking for a new way, a fresh way, a refreshing way to understand my body. So end of the
seems like there's not a lot of repetition or sequences that are being drilled, right, in your so-called research sessions or company classes. Is that?
Yeah, I sometimes have a feeling that I go in very, very large cycles. Every few months, maybe I would revisit some exercise that maybe I found very, very useful. But certainly I don't like to repeat exercises to the extent where where it becomes something comfortable, where it becomes something, oh, this I can do well, I feel comfortable, I can do this again and again. I think that for a professional dancer, doing class should never be about feeling comfortable, about coming to a place where you feel comfortably at home and just do the thing that you know and feel, I can do this well, I feel comfortable. the kind of attitude, both mentally and physically for a dancer that this produces is for a choreographer, at least like me, very unhelpful. Maybe other choreographers do work with a clear set of vocabulary, a clear set of conventions, and they need dancers who think like that. So it's not a universal thing. The end of my answer is that me as a teacher, I go into class trying to understand how my dancers that I'm working with can become better dancers generally, and better dancers in skills that we use in our work.
Okay.
It can be physical, it can be musical, it can be about attention and sensitivity, which is why viewpoint classes are very, very valuable for our company, and we do go back to them often.
Thanks,
so
Dan.
I hope I could answer.
Yeah, because we have more questions coming in from Zhu Rouxing. I believe she, I guess, is studying at Code Arts, University of the Arts in Rotterdam, I believe. And 2 questions, I guess, for both of you. Which people in different fields have you worked with so far? And do you have the most impressive experience with them, I guess? And then follow-up question is, can you give some advice for young performing artists or those who want to work in this field? So 2 questions for both of you coming from Zhu Rouxing. Yeah.
I can maybe start off answering the first one. That's sort of my favorite part about what I get to do is who I get to work with. And it's not always necessarily, I mean, sometimes it's the big names that are exciting.
Like
some,
right?
yeah, or some famous person where you're like, oh, this amazing tenor from this opera who's world known, or I'm supposed to work at the Bolshoi in Moscow in January. That's exciting. But I think the real exciting thing is actually the collaboration itself. I work with my partner who's a sculptor. I work with him a lot, and it's always a big challenge. And I think what Dani said about the dancers not repeating exercises that they are familiar with is also how I kind of view myself as a choreographer. If I already know that I can do it, then I don't need to do it. So if I think about a piece, oh yeah, okay, I can just choreograph that like this. Like I know how to do that.
For eternity, Sommer.
Yeah.
A quote by
I know how to. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think it's, I mean, we always, without knowing it, of course, we always return to tiny safeties. You know, we have sort of tendencies, but I think working with.
It's important also, you know, sometimes you need to go to where you feel familiar.
Sure, of course.
It's not like you have to constantly be on the edge of failing because it's new.
But I think sometimes you don't even know that you're returning to habits. Sometimes they just come.
Of course.
But that's like one of the benefits, I think, of working with artists from other fields. You know, when I'm starting work with a painter in England and a tenor, and working with these 2 people forces me to reimagine how I would see the work. So it's not really so much for me about the names of people who I've worked with, but I'm starting a project with a DJ, and he's a sort of like a pretty famous rapper DJ. And I think that that's really fascinating because it's not my world.
Okay.
I don't know, Dani, if you have other, before I can answer the other question, or you can say about your collaborative partners. I don't know.
I would generally say it's very exciting to be challenged with experiences that you're less familiar with. So for me, the meeting directors that need me to say a text or portray a character was always very, very exciting. Simply being in the same room with a world-renowned cellist, for example, and remembering how grateful one must be that there are people out there who are virtuosic, that they're so good at what they do, and that they share their art is something that's very inspiring. And yeah.
How about
Maybe that
advice for young dancers, young artists? Because we have another question to
my quick advice would just be to make sure that this is the thing you want to be doing. And that sounds really harsh, but it takes so much energy and so much work, and it's constant. It's great, and we really benefit from being able to do what we do, but it shows, especially in periods like this with COVID, it's a pretty constant challenge, and it's amazing, and I wouldn't have chosen anything differently, but it's I think if you're going to go for it, you have to 100% go for it with all the openness in the world. That's my
give
advice.
A piece of advice. Suppose it's something you've heard already, but you're in competition only with yourselves. You're not in competition with anyone else. Your career and your way through life is only about growing beyond who you are right now, becoming better in things that you want to get better in, and it's always in comparison to you yesterday. It's not. So whenever you audition, if the people that auditioned you come to you and tell you that you're not good or not talented, re-understand what they're saying to mean you are not who I'm looking for. Because that's actually what happened. Different choreographers, different directors and producers look for completely different types of talents and of strengths. So from their point of view, if you're not what they're looking for, they might tell you you're not good enough. But that's not true. They're simply looking for someone else. You simply have to keep improving yourself for yourself and keep searching for the people with whom working together makes sense. You need, if you want to work in collaboration, then you have to find the colleagues around you that, as Sommer and Marco and I were so lucky to find each other. We inspire each other and we can collaborate. You simply have to find the right set of people. If you want to find a job, simply go on looking for the type of boss that's looking for you. Don't try to change yourself to become something that this boss wants from you, because you won't be happy and the boss won't be happy. So it's better to keep looking for the right kind of boss.
Wow.
It's a good point.
Direct but down to the point. Yes. So we have one more question actually from JS, who asked 2 questions earlier. He is interested to know about conflict, because we talked about just now, right? The kind of conflict, tension, and how do you negotiate between putting down your ego and not compromising, or how to make progress from you said the constructive conflict. Yeah.
This is a perfect question for Dani and me.
We hit each other. I hit Sommer and she hits me back.
You can act it out right now.
Yeah, Dani and I are experts. Well, no, formerly we used to have we used to get in a lot of conflicting situations, and we were very, very passionate about how we felt about the work we were doing. So the more passionate you are, the more extreme the fight is, and we really had arguments. It was hurtful, it was painful, it was Dani, it was really frustrating. But yeah, but we also, I think that if you respect someone, if you don't respect somebody, then you probably shouldn't be collaborating with them. And if you respect the person, then if you're very, very lucky, you will learn quickly that this conflict is not to be taken personally, and that it's about the work, and that you have to find a way to push it away from your ego and kind of step back for a moment and say, wait, what are we talking about exactly? And if I'm honest with myself, I was not the person who learned very quickly. It did take me some time to grow up and step back a little bit. And I mean, in the end, I'm quite thankful for the conflict we had, because it really kind of allowed me to hone in on what it is I'm trying to do.
I think of a practical trick. Our company was lucky to participate in a Google leadership workshop.
Google leadership workshop, okay.
We were extremely lucky to be able to participate in because one of our former dancers studied to become an instructor in this technique, and as a conclusion of his training, he was required to conduct a workshop to conclude his training for free. He offered it to our dance company, so that was extremely enlightening. And of course, I can't summarize it in like a few seconds, but one of the tools they offer is, I don't remember the exact formula, but you take a breath, like when you feel a conflict is rising, before you speak, you take a deep breath, you simply breathe. The second breath, you try, as you're breathing, to calm your body down. And with the third breath that you take, you ask yourself, what's the most important thing right now? This slows down the biochemical reactions in the brain that might cause a situation to escalate into an unproductive conflict, and gives you a moment to take some distance and ask yourself, what's the most important thing? What are we trying to achieve? So I suppose what I'm saying is that one way to generally avoid conflict is to understand that the conflict is starting to emerge and understand that it's possible for you to decelerate. And a very, very important, another tool for me has been to understand, well, I understood it always theoretically. We all have different points of views. We all perceive situations in different ways. And of course, we know this, but it has to sink in a very kind of visceral way to really understand, if I'm fighting with Sommer, it's not because she wants me to fail, or it's not because she wants to do me harm. It's because something in the way she's seeing the situation is different than my way. So first assume that we both working towards a common goal. We want to collaborate with each other. And that means that whatever she's saying is she has a reason. And maybe I'm just assuming that I know her reason and disagree, but maybe it's worthwhile to take a moment and actually try to listen. What's your reason? Very, very often you will suddenly understand, oh, that's what you mean. And very often you'll understand that there's no reason for a conflict. It's actually, I see what you mean. I think we agree. You just see it from a slightly different way. Then it's very easy to find, or it becomes much more possible, at least, to find solutions that are good for all of us, what we call a win-win situation. That's something that actually started happening in We Dance, that we had to find solutions that all three of us were were happy with. So understand the other, that the other person has a different point of view, and try to actually understand what it is. That will help.
Thank you. I think, we definitely need to take a deep breath when these kind of conflicting moments arise, and just step back and give ourselves some space to, be cool, right? And take it little step at a time. Yes. So actually, I think this may be a good place to pause, because in fact, next week, we have 2 more sessions. Next Friday, we have dancers and curators actually from Taiwan. So maybe you could even conduct that session in Chinese. And then Sunday, the 15th of November, Sommer will be back again, but paired up with Adi Salat from Israel, and a former associate artistic director of the Basheva company, right? So Sommer, will get to see you again next week. Yeah. So well, thank you so much, Dan and Sommer, for joining us today. And thank you to our participants, especially JS and Roisin, for your questions to engage with our conversation. So again, I'm YaTin Lin. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Summer. Bye, Dan.
Bye.